Penn State and Matt Campbell just went into the state of Texas and beat the Longhorns for an insanely athletic cornerback.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When was the last time Penn State beat SMU, Texas, for a Lone Star State prospect right in their territory? My name is Zach Sako. I'm your host as always. Thank you so much for being here. Dhillon McGee, 3-star, depending on where you look, 3-star cornerback, 4-star cornerback out of Texas, literally right in the heart of Texas. He's going to commit to Penn State, class of 2027 here. This is somebody that Terry Smith has wanted for a long time. We're going to talk about Dhillon McGee as a prospect, insanely athletic. Stands at 6'1", runs a 4.40 40 as a cornerback. So you're not getting by him in coverage. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments section, because we're going to talk about the roller coaster of Penn State recruiting. So they get a win today, but the predictions, the crystal balls go in for Khalil Taylor to end up somewhere else. So we'll get to that in just a moment and the potential impact of that. 2 weeks is a long time, though. Let's get to the good news first. And it's that Dhillon McGee, after Penn State, hey, they were squarely in the mix. Don't count out the Nittany Lions. Never count out Terry Smith. I'll tell you that much, because if you remember the show we did a couple weeks back, we said, hey, Terry Smith, I'm going to count on Terry Smith to revamp the cornerback room. And he delivers with Dhillon McGee to go to Texas to do that, to go up against the Longhorns, right? Just the appeal of staying in state and then going to play for the Texas Longhorns, right? They're the premier school, them and Texas Tech. Dhillon McGee's offers were Texas Tech, Texas, SMU, Oklahoma. So this isn't just your everyday cornerback prospect and Penn State wins out because the competition isn't as strong. This is a huge win for Matt Campbell and of course, Terry Smith, because we saw the way that the cornerback room went. We saw them lose a couple of commits. They needed guys. And this is how you bounce back with someone who might arguably be the most athletic, most agile anyway, cornerback or prospect in this class of 2027 for Penn State, Dhillon McGee. He runs a 4.4 40. He's very fluid in coverage. In man-to-man coverage, he has very talented recovery skills, and that has to go along with the speed. But you're probably thinking, okay, this is a prospect that just relies on his speed. He relies on his athleticism, but no, scouts note the footwork, and you see it in the tape. You see it in the highlights. His ability to recover, his ability with his footwork, the way that he's able to cut and go and not get beat real easily. But then in the moments that he does, and the competition that he's facing, this is the state of Texas after all. The competition is going to be very much inflated. Maybe inflated is not the right word. It's really good. Okay. Texas is one of the premier states in the United States when it comes to high school football. You are playing great competition. You are playing, there is no slouch. There is no pushover on a week-to-week basis. So McGee's going up against quality receivers, not necessarily 5 stars every single week, but he's going up against quality receivers every single time he steps on the football field. This is somebody that Penn State has wanted for a long time. Penn State and Terry Smith had been recruiting him for years. And I can see him being one of these shutdown corners if he reaches his potential, right? Somebody who can take over the boundary, who can be in man-to-man coverage. You put him on an island and he goes up against the best receiver. And you have somebody like that in Kei'Shjuan, Telfair as guys that can just be glue guys in coverage. Now, the concern is going to be, is he going to be able to add the weight, right? He stands at 6'1", 175 pounds. That is really light. And that probably plays into a factor with his rating that, okay, if you're projecting him for college, 175 is not going to cut it. You need to be able to be 190. They're probably going to try to at least get him to add 15 to 20 pounds 200 ideally. You also don't want to sacrifice the athleticism. You don't want him to sacrifice the speed. But Penn State able to recover. You lose a couple cornerback commits. I would argue quality over quantity here with now what they have in Kei'Shjuan, Telfair, Dhillon McGee. Don't forget about Karan Caesar. So the cornerback room, I would say this is probably where it's going to stabilize. Now, Penn State did have the intention to take 4, maybe even 5 cornerbacks in this class if the opportunity presented itself. Names to watch. I mean, for the most part, Penn State's targets have kind of made their decision at this point. Could there be somebody that emerges down the stretch? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the Nittany Lions are going to be very content with Caesar, McGee, and Kei'Shjuan, Telfair. They might add somebody that emerges in their senior season to go along, because cornerback, I don't think it's a finished room for this class unless there's an actual need for Penn State. If they say, hey, we can't pass up on this guy, they will absolutely take him. So there is room, but I think Penn State is definitely content with this group. And let's just go back to the fact that Penn State went up against the Texas Longhorns. SMU, I would say, maybe was more of a bigger threat in this recruitment because 12 miles, 15 miles from his high school. So McGee is very close by, and SMU has money. We know the kind of pockets that they have. And Penn State was able to take down the local school, but also the appeal of, hey, you stay close to home and you play for the Texas Longhorns. You went into their territory. Because I understand all the concerns about, oh, how come Penn State can't get a prospect to leave Alabama? You're getting a prospect to leave Texas. Think of the recruiting battles that Matt Campbell has won in this first cycle. This is year 1 for Matt Campbell. And they've beaten Florida and Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame. It's not like every single recruiting battle is, okay, yep, they beat Maryland, they beat Purdue, they should beat these schools. No, you are going up against premier programs, heavy hitters on the recruiting trail, going into their territory. An Oklahoma prospect leaving that state to go to Penn State. A Texas prospect in the state of Texas passing up on staying home to go even further to Penn State. You have to be impressed with Matt Campbell's wins. You can be critical of the losses. I completely understand that. And we've had shows that talked about that. But at the same time, you got to give criticism where criticism is due, credit where credit is due. And Penn State deserves a lot of credit for getting this one done. This was a tough battle for a very talented prospect, and the Nittany Lions got their guy. Now, speaking of trying to get their guy, well, there are the wins. Again, credit where credit's due. Khalil Taylor, now projected to leave Pennsylvania. Where do the latest predictions have him going? You probably know the answer, but stick around here because we'll talk about it next on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's show is brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of the business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster and stay organized and focused on growing the business instead of managing software. Think about Penn State hiring Matt Campbell. The adjustment itself was important, but what's really been impressive is how smoothly it's been implemented, especially with how quick the turnaround was. Everyone knows their role. Everyone's on the same page. And that's usually what will separate a great team, a great organization from the good ones. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try it for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That is odoo.com/lockedon. In that same breath, Dhillon McGee, much needed win. Seriously, I cannot overstate how important this win was, especially with losing the commits. So for Terry Smith and Matt Campbell to bounce back for the cornerback room, major plus. Okay, now wide receiver. The rise and fall of the wide receiver recruiting here, to go from being predicted to landing not one, not two, not three, but four elite prospects at wide receiver. Really elite. I don't, that is not an overstatement. We're talking about guys that were all inside the top 250 in the nation, and then top 25 at their position. So they were all consensus 4-stars and targets that Penn State definitely wanted. They are not happy about Deshawn Hall. I can tell you that much. And people are suggesting that recruitment's not necessarily over. So to be determined. I can't speak to that. He's now committed to Auburn. These financial agreements, again, it seems like guys flip back and forth, but we will see about that one. How about we focus in on Khalil Taylor, because Jamir Dean's at Georgia right now for the time being, and Deshawn Hall's at Auburn right now for the time being. Khalil Taylor is not committed anywhere. His commitment date is July 6th. In this day and age, portal, NIL, the way recruiting is, this is a lot of time. This is a lot of time. If you want to predict, if Rivals, Steve Wiltfong want to put in a prediction for Khalil Taylor to end up at Nebraska, again, it was at Penn State for so long. It's a 50-50 battle. I've seen so many different reports suggest one thing. The Nebraska side feels really good about where they stand, and Penn State doesn't think that they're out of it. So much can change now over how many days now? It's not exactly 2 weeks, but 10, 11, 12 days to go until July 6th. So much can change. So I'm not ready to put a stamp on this and say, Khalil Taylor's gone. He's going to Nebraska. But we know for a fact it is a Nebraska-Penn State battle. How did Penn State get here? At the end of the day, I talked about it in the most recent shows, that I think Penn State messed up royally by letting Jamir Dean go. I get the impression that they didn't really put up a fight, because they were so confident that they were going to get Deshawn Hall, Khalil Taylor, and that was going to be costly in NIL. So, okay, Jamir Dean's good, but these are the prospects that we like more. Well, you don't end up getting Deshawn Hall. And as of right now, you are the underdog in the Khalil Taylor recruitment. And what kind of game does Penn State want to play here? Because I think Penn State and Matt Campbell didn't believe that, okay, hey, Nebraska could offer more, or Auburn could offer more or match us. We have the best offer on the table. And that's the learning experience here, is that just because you believe that you have the best offer at the time doesn't mean that somebody can't counter. And is this an indictment on how Matt Campbell recruits? Well, no, because we just spent the first segment talking about how they landed Dhillon McGee out of Texas. And there's no family connections this time, because I understand the pushback saying, well, Case Alexander only chose Penn State over Oklahoma because his brother was there. If you want to simplify it to that extent, go for it. I don't see it as that cut and dry. But I think Matt Campbell also needs to learn here. Okay, at Iowa State, you weren't getting into these kinds of recruiting battles on a routine basis. You would get some, but you never really had the leverage to get in these kinds of fights on the recruiting trail. And now you do. And just when you think, okay, hey, we're in the driver's seat, this one's going to wrap up, we got a verbal commitment here, we're all good. No, you don't. Not all the time anyway. So Penn State probably didn't expect Auburn to flip the script. They probably did not expect Nebraska to flip the script. And now what do? Do you get into a bidding war? Again, do you play that game? And it's just, okay, well, now we'll offer an extra $100K. When does it end? Right? I know there's going to be some people that say Penn State at all costs should go and get Khalil Taylor and Deshawn Hall. Just name the price and write the check. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. You got to build a team. You have to be able to manage the rest of the roster. And it can be detrimental to go all in on one player in particular. Khalil Taylor and Deshawn Hall definitely were needs. But if Nebraska, And what is Penn State's NIL? So this branches into more conversations. What is Penn State's NIL? Why are they getting pushed around by Nebraska and Auburn when it comes to NIL? I don't think Penn State lacks the resources. I just don't think Penn State is willing to get into a bidding war for every single prospect when it could cost you elsewhere. Again, you have to build out a team. You have to be more strategic. And if Nebraska is that desperate, if Auburn really doesn't want a player that is local from Alabama to leave and go to Penn State, okay, do whatever's necessary. I guess you could apply the same argument to Khalil Taylor since he's from Pennsylvania. But as of right now, Matt Campbell's strategy to have a balanced budget seems to be the direction that they're going in. And they've spent up for prospects that they like. So don't think that Penn State's broke or they can't. Do you want to spend? I don't know what Khalil Taylor's being offered by anybody, but some receivers are getting $3 million over 2 years. Does Penn State think it's worth it to spend that much of the budget for one wide receiver? I don't know. To be determined here, because I say 2 weeks is a lot of time. And I don't like that Penn State's gotten in this situation where now they go from 4 elite wide receiver commits to just 1. But it also means that they have the budget freed up to go and get some other priority targets taken care of if they emerge down the stretch. So there is that part of it. Hey, that is where we will wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Sako, your host as always. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Thank you so much for being here. And for more coverage around football, recruiting, wrestling, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.